Here we go. That's working now. Good evening. Welcome to 2020 for the Planning Commission. I am not Chair Leslie Lambert. I am Vice Chair Sean Landris, serving as chair today. So can we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Commissioner Pastor. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Here.
Commissioner Fresco.
Here.
Commissioner McKinnon.
Present.
Commissioner Pastor.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Here.
And Chair Landris.
Here. And the Planning Director's report.
Good evening, Commission. Happy New Year. So this will be the last meeting that the Commission has in the Council chambers for a while. So our next meeting, January 22nd, is in the East Wing of the Civic Auditorium. On that night, we'll have the mobility update. We'll talk about SB 743, parking structure grace period discussion. That's a proposal to go from 90-minute grace period to 60-minute grace period in the downtown. And then the resolution to amend the loose process for thresholds for housing projects. On February 5th, we have a special meeting again in the East Wing. 1834 14th Street Development Review Permit, 1432 17th Street map, and then 1448 7th Street Development Review Permit and map. And then on February 19th, special meeting East Wing. I guess they're all going to be special because they're in the East Wing going, okay, so that goes without saying. 411 Ocean Park Boulevard and 2019 legislative session cleanups. And coming up at City Council on January 14th, which was last night, they did an amendment to the zoning ordinance to clarify the parcel coverage limitations for R1. So it didn't really change what our understanding of what council intended, but it was a kind of a cleanup item. And then January 28th, we have the shared mobility ordinance update. And that concludes my report.
Questions for David? I have
I have a question.
two, but go ahead.
Do we know when PICO is going to be reheard?
We don't. It's not scheduled yet. We're working with the manager's office and others to figure out when that comes back.
And could you do us a favor and email us when that's going to happen so we know in advance and are prepared? Yeah, get on our calendars. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I just had...
I have one.
Yeah.
When are we going to get the revised ADU update that makes us congruent with the state law?
I think right now we're looking at it's on the 19th, the legislative session. February 19th. It's on the screen. That'll be included in that. Yeah, not everything from there, but we're sort of working through what we can bring forward, and I think that's going to be something we can.
And when second question is, when are we getting the seismic progress report?
We are scheduling that with Ariel. I'll confirm when he's available, but we'll...
Now remember, that requires no planning staff work overload. This is
right.
another department, so...
It's another division, same department.
Okay.
They're also very busy, but we'll get that scheduled soon.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, in view of SB 330, have we seen in the first 2 weeks of the new year anything come in that is suddenly under an expedited review schedule?
No, we have not received an application under SB 330.
Okay. And if we, at the moment, we're not anticipating a sudden workload acceleration issue.
Not at the moment. It's
Okay.
I do want to know it is a very, very complicated piece of legislation, and we are working with the attorney's office to understand how to implement that. We do have an application form, that is posted on the website right now to at least comply with that requirement. So we're taking it in chunks. It is a very dense legislation with a lot of things in there.
Okay, thanks. Planning Commissioner announcements.
I'd like to make a comment if that's possible.
I think I had an earlier request from Commissioner Fresco before we
Please.
go to
I just wanted to remember a former planning director named James Lunsford. He recently passed away in the last week or so, and he worked for the city for over 30 years, from 1958 to 1984, and was planning director from 1972 to 1984. And I think, I spend a lot of time reading the history of our city, and I think that he's probably the most beloved employee of the planning department of all time. So,
Apart from Mr. Martin, of course.
yeah, of course, we all love David Martin,
Right.
but I mean,
And Jim
he
too.
was planning director.
Exactly. That's right. Roxanne, Michael,
Yeah, everyone here
Right.
really is very loved.
especially the people in this room right
However, back to your point.
But the point is, when he was planning director, I just want to run through some of the crazy stuff that happened during that period, and just to grasp it. That's when that causeway project with the hotel outside the end of the pier happened, that ended up with the Save the Pier movement, that then resulted in the landmarks ordinance. He was in charge when the freeway went in, when the OP redevelopment project happened. There was a huge issue about communes and boarding houses in R1, which was extremely heated around here at that time. That was when they redeveloped the Douglas site, when they built the high rises on Ocean Avenue. Apparently there were no height limits at that time, and he, after those high rises went in, fought for them. And then there were, and Santa Monica Place happened during that time, and then the huge turnover in Santa Monica politics when all the what we now know as the Smir people came in, and they had a whole quality of life movement, and there was that famous 5-month building moratorium that still makes people's hair prickle when they hear about it. And when it was over, those limitless heights had gone down from 12 stories to 6 stories, and then when the moratorium ended, it was 4 stories in downtown. So that was pretty controversial. And then rent control came, and even with all of those changes and that huge change in leadership in City Hall, he survived it all. So that was pretty amazing. And just as a little fun bit of trivia, he was replaced after his retirement as planning director by Paul Silverin, who we all know very well. And after he retired, he consulted with the city for a little while. Then he had a business creating labels for radius maps. Remember those? That was fun. And then right around the time he retired, which is how I came to know him and had an opportunity to meet him, was he created this book called Looking at Santa Monica, which is and it was illustrated by his wife. And it's a fantastic book that really is filled with love of the city and filled with tiny bits of fascinating trivia that you could just use it as a tour guide and walk around the city with it. And I encourage everyone to look for it somewhere on the internet and get one. And so I just felt like he was a pretty important figure, and I'm glad he was here, and I'm sorry he's not anymore. Thank you.
And you said he served on the Landmarks Commission?
Oh, yes. He also served on the Landmarks Commission. All the best city staff, when they retire, serve on the Landmarks Commission.
Or our exile, by the way.
Just saying. And he served for 2 years, or approximately 2 years, around 1998 to about 2000. So, yes.
Thank you. And perhaps we might adjourn in his memory tonight.
Yes. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinnon.
Mine's a slightly different comment, but it's related to some of the work that's been going on here for the last few years. And that is, during the course of the last few weeks over the Christmas, New Year period, I was in Australia. And one of the most striking features of the last few weeks is that we have a continent that's now ablaze, and that there are days and days, the last 2 months, where the major cities are heavily laden with smoke to the extent you can't see the other end of City Hall, and a whole continent has average temperatures of over 100 degrees every day, and that there are hundreds of fires that join up over hundreds of miles, and people are being lifted off the beaches by the military, and there's little or nothing that can be done about it. And although the Murdoch press keeps suggesting that it's arsonists or load, it is in fact global warming that's dried the continent out, and there have been fires in Australia for thousands of years. but certainly not in a lot of the places that are. And it drives home that the argument that's being made here constantly that we are too small or that there's nothing that we can do in Santa Monica is not appropriate. And that we have at times asked you to think about bringing back an environmental session and looking at what we can do to stiffen and lead the issues around the environment. We have no time to lose. That is the message of Australia that is ablaze at the moment. And that whatever we can do as leaders in this city, and from what starts here and rolls out anywhere else, we need to, and we need to do it as urgently as possible. And so you never know how much time you have left on a planning commission or any commission, but for whatever time is left here, I would like to suggest that we try and aim ourselves in that direction as urgently as possible.
Thank you. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, you're in the queue. Oh, nope. All right. Okay, we have no official approval of minutes. We have no statements of official action. We have item 5A on the consent. I'm seeing
8A.
this as 8A. I'm sorry.
I
Yes,
move,
it's
I move
8A.
the consent calendar.
Well, is there a request to pull an item from consent?
I would like to pull item 8A from the consent calendar.
Okay.
Do you have disclosures for item 8B?
Item 8B.
That's also on the consent
It is
calendar.
also on consent. Are there disclosures for item 8B? Seeing none. Commissioner McKinn, did you want to move the consent
Yep, I
calendar?
move the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Well, you're moving 8B. On the
Correct,
yes,
which is still the
yes.
consent calendar, yeah.
Okay.
Moved by Commissioner McKinnon, seconded by Commissioner Reese. We do this by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Great. So now we will take up item 8A, and I suppose we will have the staff report if that is available. That's next week.
It's almost worth it to see this. Welcome back to the podium.
Yes.
You need to turn it on.
Yeah. Great.
No,
So as you know, resolutions of intention are kind of a perfunctory step for the commission to, begin to have a dialogue. There are 2 items on here with respect to amending the text of the downtown community plan. One has to do with increasing the heights for structures associated with public space programming activities on the rooftops of public parking structures. As the report states, the city was in receipt of an application for a rooftop cinema, which was something that was in partnership with DTSM. DTSM has expressed interest in also activating the roofs for, not just this particular application, but just in general as parking demand continues to shift over time. We're looking at ways to repurpose our public parking garages and making them useful for the public. And, if you've been to the top of the garages, there's some amazing views from up there. And certainly some of these structures are more well used than others, and so they're looking at ways to how we can make utility of these public resources. And this is not intended to add entire stories or buildings on top of structures at all. It's really accessory structures. In the case of that cinema project, they had a bar, or a food concession area, but it was a structure on the roof, and so it's height, and there's really no other way to address that kind of a situation other than through a DCP amendment. The second item has to do with defining, amending the definition of housing projects in a DCP. This is something that the Commission has heard public testimony about, and so, I don't think we've made decisions as to, what to do about it, but it is an issue that we're bringing forward within the context of the housing policy discussion. So those are the 2 items that are part of this ROI.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff? No questions for staff. Are there public comment? Okay, so then let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Fresco.
The reason I pulled this item is because, in short, I am not resolute with the intent about this idea of the heights being raised for these kinds of activities on top of parking structures. My suggestion is basically that we would move forward on the ROI for the housing project definition and to instead schedule a discussion about what this really means in terms of Promenade 3.0 and what our intentions are there, and make sure that we're moving forward with all of our goals that we have already been working on in a appropriate manner before I'm ready to have any intentions about it. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but I just feel like we're not ready to move on it here.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yeah, so within that thinking, is there anything in this ROI that would preclude that discussion that you're wanting to have?
Yeah, once we move down the road with staff making red lines that we then discuss and all of that, I just feel like it's a harder thing to stop. And I just want to understand the idea for it before and kind of slow it down and make sure that everybody's thinking about it well.
But in a sense, that's the definition of an ROI, is giving people a heads up to start thinking about it. So if they have those issues, they could
So
bring them
many
to the
times
table.
people come and talk to us about things and we have discussions, we get information, and then we kind of sketch out that, oh yeah, we might be able to do it this way, or we could just do that way, or I just feel like this is a big move. Heights in the downtown plan is a really big deal, and you and I in particular fought really hard
No,
for
I
those heights in
I understand
Bayside.
heights are an issue. I'm
And
just
I am
asking
just
the
not
best forum
willing
for
to
it.
mess with those casually. I want to be resolute in my intention in order to vote on a thing like this. So I just need more information. I want to know we spend so much time talking about Promenade 3.0 and activating the promenade and getting businesses to open up there and getting people to walk on the streets, and then all of a sudden we're going to change our big plan so that we can put people on the roof of a parking structure that, I mean, I don't know. I almost feel like it could incentivize people to drive downtown because you can just pull into the parking structure, walk upstairs, go to your movie, walk back to your car. I don't know. I'm just not sure this is something we want to do, and I want to be very cautious. That's all.
So I put myself into the queue as a member of the Promenade Task Force with Chair Lambert and Commissioner Fresco. I lean toward Commissioner Fonda Bernardi's perspective in terms of how an ROI works, and I understand that concept. It's a little bit surprising, given the conversations that we've had, to have this come with no communication from beyond these paragraphs and no communication from downtown Santa Monica. I also have some concerns about what it means to put that number of people on the roof, given my experiences, and I'm sure those of many people, with the elevators and the staircases in parking structures. So I have building and safety or development standard questions. So for me, I share Commissioner Fresco's concerns. I would have loved to have heard about this in the context of Promenade 3.0, but I would be prepared to move forward with this, but I would not like to see Redline without a serious analysis of everything that this involves. Purely the question of box offices, concession stands, and shade structures and bathrooms. There's a conversation that needs to happen there, but there's also a conversation that needs to happen about what it means to have so many people on the roof, and in the event of some kind of emergency of any kind, what it means to move those people safely down from the roof on a building that was not designed for that purpose. So I'd be prepared to vote for the ROI on the understanding with staff that this isn't going to come back to us without a really significant workup that addresses all of those issues. It also feels a little bit like there's an opportunity. I appreciate that there's an opportunity here, but this feels, I don't want to say the phrase that starts with spot, but it feels a little bit ad hoc. How's that?
So if I could just
Yes.
reassure the commission that when it comes back, we would have a thorough analysis of what this really means. Obviously, anything related to building safety and capacity of the garage, exiting, all of that would have to be addressed before anybody could operate something on top of the garage. So, this is just to allow someone to come forward with an idea that would increase the height of a parking structure. It's by no means approving a project or not, we're not looking past the issues of accessibility and building safety and loading and exiting and all that kind of stuff would have to be considered before a real project would come forward.
And there's none of this that could be accomplished through a variance process?
No.
Okay.
Well, they
And I
could do
just-
it if they put the concessions on the floor below.
Sure, there are probably other ways you could do a
So,
project like this,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, in order to make their concept work, the screen is really what caused the height increase. But yeah, you're right. There's probably other ways they could do it. But I would also remind the commission that a change to the height in the downtown requires a supermajority vote of council. So they would need 5 votes in order to approve this. So there is a,
Does it still, given the retroactive restrictions that SB 330 has placed on those types of, I'm not taking sides. I would just like to know legally that holds in light of SB 330.
we check that. But
Okay.
Yeah, we would check that, but I don't.
Okay.
So, Chair, this is a very typical way we start any consideration of any change that involves a change to a town plan or an instrument of zoning. A resolution of intent is voted on by us, and then it comes back, and it's with all the appropriate documentation, and then we have the discussion and thrash it out almost line by line as we then see what the proposal is. And I think this is entirely in line with that. I suggest we move forward and we wait with interest to see what is considered by members of the planning department and what could or couldn't be allowed before we make that recommendation. And sharing or not sharing your concerns, Commissioner Fresco, I think it's an appropriate time for us to have that discussion then. So I will vote for this. I'll move it.
You want to move it?
Yes, I will
Okay.
move it.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Reese was leaning in that direction.
Commissioner Pastor seconded it. So we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? Can we do
I
this?
just wanted to add one more little point. As I did speak with Jing about this on the phone, I asked her some questions about what brought it on, and she mentioned the 22 other ordinances that staff is working on. And is this really a priority? I mean, shouldn't they be working on the landmarks ordinance, which we've been waiting on since Elvis was alive? I mean, this is.
So that's up to them, not us, and we'll see what comes of this.
Shall we vote? Can we vote roll call or by voice? Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Is that? Are you
Apparently-
voting?
Me, I'm opposed.
You're opposed. Okay. And I'm just clarifying
I'm
because you
opposed.
asked for opposed and you said aye. So I'm just
Apparently,
triple checking.
speaking against it, she's opposed to it.
That's
Yes.
right. Abstentions? Seeing none, that passes. We'll move on to item 9A, the conditional use permit amendment. Are there any ex parte communication disclosures? Commissioner?
I visited the site today at 2 o'clock and spent quite some time down there checking the joint out, and it's a pretty interesting place, actually.
Okay. I received one email from Donna Gentry, which I forwarded to Kyle and I believe has been shared with the commission. Could we have the staff?
My only report is that I've been there more than once, and I walk by there regularly. I have not done any site visit since I've read the staff report or focused because of the staff report, but I certainly know the facility.
And of course, Planning Director Martin lives not far away.
I don't know that we're required to disclose the specific
What
Santa
night
Monica
were you
Brew Works
there?
products that have been consumed, perhaps prior to the submission of this. All right, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Chair, and good evening. Michael Roque, Associate Planner of the City Planning Division, and the project before you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit amendment to allow for an 18,000 square foot expansion of an existing microbrewery, Santa Monica Brew Works, located at 1920 Colorado Avenue. The subject site is an 89,000 square foot lot located in the MUBL zone on the southwest corner of Colorado Avenue and 20th Street. The site is currently developed with a 47,000 square foot building and is currently consists of UCLA medical office and Santa Monica Brew Works. A large surface parking lot is located in the front half of the parcel and has access from both 19th Street, shown here, and 20th Street. and has 117 on-site parking spaces. The subject property is surrounded by office and private school to the north, office and industrial type uses to the west and east, and the expo line runs directly south here of the subject site. The microbrewery has been in operation since 2014, and in 2016 it received approval of a CUP to allow for the on-site sale and consumption of alcohol within a 2,980 square foot tasting room. Since the approval of that CUP, the operations have thus grown, and the applicant is seeking the expansion of the manufacturing and like overall production space, the addition of a new tasting room, a new food component, a new outdoor beer garden, and they would also like to amend the hours of operations. Moving on to the proposed expansion, here's a breakdown of the new interior footprint. So the new food component, which is shown here in blue, will occupy approximately 985 square feet. It's going to be located in Suite A, as shown here, which is the new space, and it will be available for takeaway service and for on-site consumption while the brewery is like actually opened. Currently, most of the manufacturing and the actual production and storage take place in Suite C and B, which are shown here. And the applicant is seeking to expand this area into Suite A, which will be a portion. This is a portion of the suite. This isn't the whole footprint, but the whole suite backs in and it goes further west as you go down the site. And this will be where the new actual second production line will be, in addition to keeping the existing tanks and actual storage area here. Currently, there is also, under the previous CUP that was granted, the applicant had the right to open a 2,980 square foot tasting area with 112 seats, including a counter area and walk-up bar, which is also located in Suite C, as shown here. The new tasting room will be located here, shown in green. This will occupy approximately 1,425 square feet of like floor area with 63 seats, and a new walk-up bar at the south end of that space. And the total tasting room area upon completion will be 3,655 square feet with a total of 175 seats within the interior space. Moving on to the last part of the expansion request, and this is the addition of the new outdoor weekend beer garden area. This will occupy approximately 1,783 square feet, consisting of 75 seats, and this will be situated directly in front of the actual suite space that they're currently occupying within the private parking lot. The hours of operation that the applicant is actually proposing is 12 p.m. to dusk, and once again, this will be on weekends only. In order to provide the added safety area to this area, the area will be barricaded by actually providing movable in-ground bollards that will block all vehicles from entering, and also maintaining adequate circulation while the beer garden is like actually open. So, as you see on the plan here, the plan is to provide the first set of movable bollards will be located here near the front entrance and exit off of 20th Street. That this will prevent cars from being able to move inward to the actual site, and there will be a little bike pad parking a short-term biking pad valet area for short-term bicycle parking here, and then the other movable bollards that are going to be in ground will be on the other side of the beer garden, and these will prevent cars that come in from 19th Street to come through the actual site through this way, going from east to west. And then the other thing that is also being added, and that we also propose as condition, is to add to make these first 8 spots in front of the actual beer garden as no parking areas. This will also further add safety measures so cars cannot also pull forward into the beer garden area, and as also once again is like an extra safety precaution and measure. All of these conditions are reflected in condition number 3 in the statement of official action that's before you tonight. Moving on to the part of this CUP that there's part of this CUP. The applicant is also seeking to revise the hours. Provided are the existing hours along with the actual proposed hours. The applicant is requesting to open 1 hour like earlier on weekdays to 5 p.m. and 1 hour later on Sundays to 9 p.m. Also, in addition to the modified hours, the applicant is requesting the following changes to their standard hours of operation, and that is to open from noon to 11 p.m. on federal holidays that fall on Monday through Thursday, and then also closing at midnight on the day before that federal holiday. The federal holidays that the applicant is wishing to include in these hours, and also is to ensure that also it does not interfere with the UCLA Health Center's parking demands, and also their hours of operations are listed here. New Year's, President's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. The project is also compliant with all of our parking requirements or code-related parking requirements. There will be 117 parking spaces proposed as part of this expansion, which can accommodate the 106 and 112 spaces required for both weekday and weekend operations. The previous CUP required that this site have an on-site shared parking agreement. However, since the previous CUP and Suite A, which was formerly occupied by Agensis, has moved out, it has now created a surplus of parking, and therefore there is no longer needing an on-site shared agreement. Also, one thing to also take into consideration is we did the parking calculations, which are also provided in the actual staff report. It was under the assumptions that one, that UCLA is closed during all tasting room and the outdoor beer garden hours, and the second thing is that all other brewery operations will be closed on the weekends. Further, the applicant did provide a parking study, and this confirmed that there was a minimum of 53 unutilized parking spaces that exist during the busiest evening, which will also ensure that there will be adequate on-site parking at all times. As far as compatibility, in terms of the project compatibility with the actual surrounding area, it is located on Colorado Avenue, which includes a variety of small industrial uses with actual close proximity to the expo line. The use will increase pedestrian activity in the nearby area and on Colorado Avenue. The microbrewery has been in operation for over 5 years without like any complaints. And lastly, it is consistent with the loose, and that is it is to ensure pedestrian-oriented and active ground floor use, which will have a higher, which will actually create a higher volume of pedestrian activity and actually provide a comprehensive mix of uses. As part of this request too, and subsequent to the applicant's review of the statement of official action, there is a revision to condition number 7 in your staff report. That's going to read a little differently. So the added language that we added to the condition number 7 is underlined and is also italicized, and basically the language reads that along with the sale of wine, craft kombucha, and beer produced in collaboration with other breweries as like authorized under the existing Type 23 ABC license. So this is just to include that they are not just precluded to only sell their alcohol. They are allowed to also sell craft kombucha, wine, and other collaboration beers if that's what they choose to do, and that is authorized under the existing ABC license that they have. This was reflected in the staff report and also in the findings. It just wasn't carried over into the conditions. Into this condition, so we just added that for actual clarity. Staff has received 2 public correspondences from the public, and they are in support of this actual request. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve conditional use permit amendment 19 ENT-0144 based on the findings and subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report and the statement of official action presented in front of you tonight. And this will conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Let's start on this side for questions. Commissioner Pastor.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I just have a couple of quick questions. There was something that said that the parking assumptions assumed that all other operations were closed on the weekends. I didn't exactly understand that.
So
Yeah, that
Clarity-
number two,
yeah.
all other brewery operations are closed on the
So
weekends.
the
What are-
brewery operations mean all the manufacturing and production. There's going to be no staff. That they basically there's minimal from my understanding, and the applicant could
Gotcha.
probably clarify this. There's very minimal staff that's there on the weekends that are actually doing the actual production aspects.
Understood. Thank you. And is the UCLA Health Center, is it like a not a walk-in clinic, but is it like a,
I believe it's
Clinic?
more of a doctor office. It's like doctor offices where it's by appointment only. I don't think it's like a clinic where you just walk in. It's not like it's not like it's not like an urgent care type of facility where you can just go walk in. I think it's more appointment
and
based
then
only.
one thing I don't know if it's a question as much as it's a thought to think about is scooters and scooter corrals. Is that something you guys talked about at all? Whether or not there's an appropriate place on site? Because I hope that people are not driving their cars, and perhaps they shouldn't be driving scooters either, but better than cars.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what the parking study actually sort of further emphasized is that even on our busiest evening, there's still 53 unutilized spaces in the parking lot. So people don't really drive to go to these places, and it's not a typical thing that people are driving to because you're going to be drinking. So
Right.
obviously there's other car share lift, like, there's other car share opportunities that people use. In terms of like providing other corrals for scooters and stuff, that's something that we can consider in online, or the applicant can look into if they feel there's a demand and people are actually driving scooters to the actual facility. But at the moment, we are providing sufficient bike parking to actually accommodate for some of those other modes of actual transportation.
Okay, yeah, I would like us to think about maybe a scooter corral and or maybe designated places for drop off of an Uber and Lyft.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Fresco?
Okay. I do have a question actually, and it follows on this. If we look at, can you bring up a site? The
Yeah.
full site map. So a big one that shows us. Do you have one that shows us streets?
I can pull up. What I can do is I can pull up our like.
That's
aerial
great.
maps.
That's
Perfect.
actually fine. So, one of the things that strikes me is the 20th Street. So on 20th Street, when you're using the bike lane, the bike path, the Expo bike path, there's a light, and it's a big one because 20th Street is a major north-south. Or northwest southeast. 19th Street is an extremely quiet park, is a quiet pathway. And on the weekends, what I've noticed is that while people are expected to stop and push the button and wait for the light to change, it frequently doesn't happen on 19th Street because it's such a limited street. To the extent that this is going to be increasing vehicle use, and the extent that it is maybe increasing Uber and Lyft drop-off, is there a way to, let's say, discourage left turn exits from the site, particularly on the weekends, to encourage vehicle traffic to be using 20th Street as opposed to 19th Street?
If I'm not mistaken, and I think Scott might be able to clarify this, I think on 20th Street now, when you come off the exit on this side, this entrance, there is a no left-hand turn sign that's already in place.
Right.
It's
and
almost
is on 19th? Is there?
on 19. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You could. Yeah. You can only turn. Yeah. You can only go right.
You can only go
outside.
right, so we're not going to see
can only
people
go right.
coming out and sort of
Correct.
racing across the tracks at
Yeah,
that
it's
point.
almost impossible
Okay.
to make a left-hand turn because of the signal and where the
Yeah.
to make a left-hand turn out there, you wouldn't be able to get across and get.
Got
through.
it. Okay,
So,
that's helpful to
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, and this is coming out of, I remember seeing this as a consistent state legislative issue. I noticed that you added kombucha to the list and you added wine. There's cider. Wine, craft, kombucha, and beer. Where does cider fall in this list? Can we? Okay, so this is the
he can
staff.
probably
This
answer
is
that a
really
lot
the
better.
staff. The
He's the
staff
expert.
question is
Yeah,
this
he's the
whether?
expert on
I
that.
guess my question is: is this condition as expansive as it needs to be for full flexibility for the applicant.
I see what you're saying. I would probably defer that to him if he feels like there's something that needs to be added. We can consider that, and we can add that to the language if it need be. If you guys are comfortable.
Okay,
with
because
that.
I understand that it's
Yeah,
a
sure.
statewide
That makes
issue with
sense.
definitions. I just
Absolutely.
want to, if we're going to do this, we might as well do this
I would agree.
right.
Gotcha.
Yep. Okay. All right. Seeing no other questions, then I guess we can hear from the applicant. You'll have 15 minutes. We have one request to speak, and so if you want to reserve some time, do you want to reserve some time to speak after the public?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll be brief.
Okay. You got 3 minutes. Right. No, in addition to the 3. Okay. All right. I know.
Sure.
The other mic.
Quickly, my name
The other mic. That's the mic that's lit.
Got it.
Yeah.
My name is Scott Francis. I am co-owner, co-founder, and president and CEO of Santa Monica Brew Works. At times, I even wash the bottles in the at the brewery. I want to thank you for taking your time to listen to Michael and to give me an opportunity to speak. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Santa Monica Brew Works. As you know, we are Santa Monica's first and only production brewery. We opened our doors in June 2014. Our beer is sold in over 1,000 bars, restaurants, hotels, event centers, supermarkets, and stores in California, Nevada, Japan. Soon, we plan to go into Arizona and South Korea. Now, the concept of the company was to combine two things we loved: craft beer and the city of Santa Monica. And if you ever look at our cans, it actually says that on our cans. We employ 21 people full-time, most of whom either live in Santa Monica or have lived in Santa Monica. We support the community and local charities. In 2019 alone, we made financial and product donations to over 50 charitable organizations, including the Santa Monica Fire Department, the New Road School, Make-A-Wish, Santa Monica Repertory Theater, Team Primetime, Westside Food Bank, Santa Monica YMCA, Santa Monica Symphony, Meals on Wheels, Santa Monica Sustainable Works, the Santa Monica Travel and Tourism Bureau, Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce, Wildlife Learning Foundation, Creative Community for Peace, St. Monica Catholic Church, and the Santa Monica Police Department, for whom we held a barbecue and beer benefit over the summer to benefit the family of a fallen officer. And that's not even everything. We embrace all the requests that come to us, and when they're within the law and within our means, we do what we can to help people. Since we opened up our tasting room in September of 2016, pursuant to your grant of CUP 16 ENT 0018, and since that time, our tasting room has become everything that we said it would when we came to you a couple of years ago. It's a meeting place for the community and tourists alike. We've had customers meet for the first time in our brewery and later get married. We have cyclists start and end their weekend rides at the tasting room. Offices gather at our brewery after work. Mothers visit after mommy and me classes. Local people celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. We even have a math club that visits, and I can go on and on about all the different kinds of people that come to our brewery. We've even hosted an open forum for candidates running for mayor of Santa Monica just before the election. Our tasting room it's truly an uplifting gathering place with a great mix of people who just want to have a beer, have a chat with their friends while sitting beside a brewery floor where our beer is made. Our customers are really great. We treat them with respect. And we just don't have any disturbances or problems at our brewery. Michael explained to you why we're here tonight. There are a couple of things that are not, we haven't requested formally, but I'd like to request them now. The Santa Monica Press decided to write a little article yesterday about our appearance tonight. And all of a sudden, everybody had suggestions about what we should do. I hope you're doing this. I hope you're doing that. And, it's funny. I'm the guy that always says no because I want to be careful about our business. I don't want to have any problems in the city. I want our customers to be happy. Not that happy, but happy enough. And so I'm going to ask you for 3 things that were not mentioned that I sort of culled from the requests that have been made, one even made in here tonight. What I'd like to do is this. I'd like to ask you guys if we could open up 1 hour earlier on the weekends at 11 a.m. instead of 12 noon, just so we could sort of do like a brunch thing, if that's okay. The other thing is, we asked that the beer garden be closed at dusk, but having spoken to a bunch of people and thinking about it further, I'd like to allow it to be opened a little bit later. I'd like to close it, instead of at dusk, I'd like to close it 1 hour before we're required to close. So on Saturdays, we close at 12 p.m. at midnight, and I'd like to have the opportunity to close the beer garden at 11 p.m. I don't know if I'm actually going to do that, but I'd like to have the opportunity to decide to do that. And on Sunday, we've requested to close 1 hour later at 9 p.m., and I would ask that we could keep the beer garden open until 8 p.m., which is 1 hour before. Same thing on the federal holidays, whatever days they fall on. That's basically it. We've really carefully thought through all our requests, and the planning department has recommended them. I thank Michael. He spent a lot of time working with me on this. I assure you that we'll operate in the same manner that we've operated before, safe, responsible. I think we've really done a good thing for Santa Monica. Our name is spread all over the world with our cans traveling, and a great thing for the community. The last thing is this. I'd like to bring it up for discussion, if it's okay. One of the requests that we've had is live music. For what it's worth, I was in the music business for 25, 30 years. I ran 2 big music companies. I'm of 2 minds about the music. I think what I'd almost like to do is limit myself and just have maybe acoustic amplified music, if that was okay. Obviously, I know I've got to have certain licenses from the performing rights societies, but I'd like to be able to have the opportunity to do that. Probably in the beer garden on the weekends, maybe 1 or 2 days during the week. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but at least I'd like to have the opportunity to do it, and however you want to restrict me is fine. But so it's the hours and the addition of music would be wonderful if we could do that sort of ad hoc tonight. And if you have any, I'm done. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer all of them.
So we'll start with Commissioner Pontificati.
Do we not have a list anymore? Is that gone by the wayside?
I'm going.
I see. Okay.
For questions, I'm going.
No, well, I won't worry about that anymore then.
No questions. Okay. Commissioner McKinney.
There we go.
There you go.
So, Mr. Francis, coming from Australia, I'm extremely familiar with, beer and middies and schooners and slabs and grabbing a cold tinny and all that sort of stuff. What is craft beer, though? Because I'm completely baffled. What's the difference between that and, say, a cold bud?
Think of it as having dinner at McDonald's.
Yes.
And then having dinner at a nice restaurant.
I don't do that, but go on.
Well, there you go. Having dinner at McDonald's or having dinner at a fine culinary restaurant. We don't mass produce our beer. We make our beer in a different way than the big breweries. It's not automated. We use our hands. We're artisans, and we make different kinds of beers.
But it is cold beer, right? It's not warm like the English have.
No, not warm beer. It's cold beer. You're more than welcome to come in and let it sit for a while, and it'll get warm. But only cold beer.
And I noticed also that you had something about craft kombucha. Do you make that?
No, we don't make craft kombucha. Making craft kombucha is a very delicate thing. It uses different types of yeast than we use when we make beer. It could contaminate our beer, so we don't make kombucha. I'm not looking to make kombucha. What I want to be able to do is sell kombucha. So the request for wine and kombucha is based on the fact that a lot of our customers are gluten-free. And I don't know if you ever had a gluten-free beer, and we've tried to make it. It's not so good. And I don't even think I would call it beer. But wine and kombucha gives a lot of people an alternative to come into our brewery and have something to drink.
So when I was down there today, you seem to be serving coffee with beer, or is that?
So, yes. We sell cold brew coffee. We sell soda and things like that to people who don't want alcohol. We often take out one of our beers called PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, but really pale chocolate heaven, and we combine it. We top it off with cold brew beer, and we call it a breakfast beer, and it gives it a very nice taste.
I'm learning quite a lot here this evening. And there's something else, a Heartbreak bartender or boozed out bartender drink.
No, it's
Is
called
that just-
It's called burnt out bartender, and that's actually a phrase that was one of my partners was a bartender at one time, and somebody said to him, "You're nothing but a burnt out bartender," and that stuck with him for quite a while. And so all of the names of our beers have meaning. Most of them are named after Santa Monica, streets in Santa Monica, like 19th and Hayes and things like that. Ocean Park, Pilsner. If you come in and look at our board, we sell 5 beers in the marketplace. We sell like another 20 to 25 that we just make in small quantities for the tasting room.
So with the music, do you anticipate it? You would just like the option to have live music.
I would just like to have the option. Like I said, I was in the music business for a long time. I can tell you that not everybody likes the same music. And, I could have an acoustic person come in and play James Taylor, and maybe half the people would love to hear it and half the people wouldn't. So I'm a little bit on the fence about the music, but I'd like to have the option.
So I'm really interested in people coming to this place not in a car. How would you characterize the number of people who come? Is it 20% of people come in a car and the rest walk and ride a bike or come on the expo?
It depends on the day. During the week, we have a lot of people walk over from the Winter Garden, where the office is there. A lot of people, and so we have people that scooter over. We have people that electric bike over. We do have people drive, but I would say, there's one stat that we did that on our busiest day during a 2-week period, there were 53 spots that were just open, which really means that people take Ubers. They're pretty responsible. They take the train. On the weekends, we have tons of people come from the expo line. And so I can't give you a percentage, but I can tell you that certainly a majority of people do not drive to our brewery. I maybe would say 20 to 25% drive.
Following up from Commissioner Pastor, we all share a concern with people drinking and driving.
Mm-hmm.
If you can somehow work to break that even more heavily than you have, so you really put the emphasis on people not driving but coming some other way, that would be, I think, a big step.
It's funny because the way to do that would be sort of, I'm going to give them a discount. If I give them a discount on beer, they may drink more. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know, but I will tell you that, we watch it. So it's sort of funny. We could be very busy in the brewery, and then you walk outside and there's nobody in the parking lot. It's almost like you could pull up and you don't think anybody's inside, but it's quite the opposite.
And you are now going to start to serve more food. Is that the?
We're gonna serve food. We have currently food trucks come, one a food truck every night. We are going to serve food. I don't think that will for takeaways. Certainly, there'll be more people in the parking lot during the day. The parking lot's empty. We control almost all the.
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people eating while they drink. So
eating while they're drinking. Okay, so during the day when the tasting room is not open, the food component, I call it a food component. It's not a restaurant. Food component is for takeaway food.
Right.
A lot of people from the Winter Garden, there's no place for them to get food. They'll come over, take food back to their office. When the tasting room is open, though, people will have the choice either to take it home with them or to walk straight into the brewery. Because there's, you can't see it on the plans, but we're opening up a hallway from the current space into the new Suite A, and the food component, it's right there. So basically you'll come in, you'll be able to order your food, you'll probably get a number, and then you'll go back and get your food, or we'll have a runner bring the food to you in the tasting room.
My final question is, at your busiest, are we talking 100 people, 200, 400 people on site so far?
Well, we're only allowed to have 200 people in the brewery. I mean, that's the fire department, 200. And, usually when it's busy, we have somebody outside, with a clicker counting the people that go in and go out. We certainly can have between 150 and 200 people. We have done that on Monday night. We had quite a lot of people.
And the maximum, if you were allowed the full expansion in the beer garden inside and so on, would be what, 400?
Well, it depends on the fire department. The number of seats, I think we're at 175 seats, but we can have room for 350 to 400 people. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's plenty of room.
Thank you. Commissioner Pastor.
Good evening. I was really glad to hear about this brewery. I didn't know it was there. That's great.
Thanks.
If we were to ask you to work with planning and DOT to try to designate a drop-off zone and some kind of corral, and I don't want to cause you a bunch of headaches with DOT. Is that something you'd be willing to look into?
Well, it's a little bit of a problem. I'll tell you. I'll tell you why. I mean, on the weekends we provide for. You can see on the plans we're going to have a bike corral that'll fit 30 bicycles, and I'm probably going to hire a bike valet to actually take care of people's bikes and maybe even fix them while they're there, put air in them, things like that. And we could definitely put scooters there. As an aside, I'm a fan and not a fan of the scooters. I get to my brewery in the morning, and one or two of the scooter companies has decided to drop a whole bunch of scooters in front of my brewery in the no loads in the loading zone, and they pretty much, as you know, came in, took over the city without even asking any permission.
Wow,
and,
now we're into a scooter debate.
And
it's amazing how it just takes everything over, doesn't it? Perhaps pause on that and go back to the other thing.
I don't want to get into
my point is this: we welcome the scooters because we like that people come on the scooters. But I don't. That almost makes me feel like I'm providing them with a landing place for their scooters. And I can assure you, if I do that, I'm going to come to the brewery, and the money that I pay for rent will be to house their scooters on my property and have to move them because they're in the way of the trucks and things like that.
I guess I look at it a little bit differently, which is that if you try to enforce where they go, then they won't go into your loading zone, and they will not be littered across the site.
Well, what happens is, so we have a bike, we have some bike racks, and we certainly can put a sign that says, "Please park your scooters here." More than happy to do that.
That's really what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, that's easy. I mean,
and then
we
what
sort of
about
do
the
that
Uber
now.
and Lyft drop off?
So on the weekends, we've devised a little place where there will be Lyft and an Uber drop off. It's right at the the bollards at the top near the entrance. You sort of drop off over there. Currently, people's
Which bollards? The bollards
the
on
top
left,
top
on
right, the top right. All right, that's where we have it, Michael. Yeah, yeah, for the loading for. Oh, this is Uber. I'm sorry. Yeah, so we decide. Yeah, on the, there it is, right?
Yes, this area.
Right there is a drop off for Uber and Lyft.
Oh, okay.
Right now it sits there and it's just empty.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you before.
And so, are you planning on having some signage there?
Yeah,
or?
absolutely.
Great.
We've got signage. We're gonna have signage everywhere. We talked about that.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Reese?
Yep. Hi. Only question, I want to talk a little bit about the music, and I sense we're going to hear probably more from staff on that, whether we can even go down that path at this point. But how important is the exterior music to you? Because I'm pretty certain that if it's an interior use, you're not going to really have any problems because your neighbors are pretty far away. The close to residential is pretty far away. But once you get into the outside and you have music, that to me is a little more of a...
I have to tell you, for me, it's almost, I want to see what it's like, and then I would sort of make a decision. I can tell if it's going to be a disturbance or not a disturbance, if it's going to be a great thing or a bad thing. I'm not looking to disturb anybody. If the council says, you know what, we think you should pass on the outside, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I mean, I'd like to have it, but it's not a thing that's going to make or break us.
Okay.
People want to sit outside. They want to drink beer. Maybe I put a speaker for the music, the licensed music that we play, like Sirius Radio, whatever we use now. But I don't necessarily have to have someone perform outside. It's not a huge. It's nice. Other breweries do it. I'm sure you've been there. Most of them do it. I certainly wouldn't do it at night. That's for sure. It would be during the daytime. And if you want to restrict me on hours, that's fine.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a good solution. My solution was there's a section of our code that allows us after a year to review your CUP to make sure that that you're okay and in compliance. So that would be something I would push for if the commission agreed.
Come on down. Anytime you can come and check us out, walk the brewery, ask questions, look at what we're
Unfortunately,
doing.
it's not that easy. It's you having to come to us and say, look, I've been a good boy.
Happy to do it.
But I'm happy to go there and visit. And
We can do it
as
both
many
ways.
times
You-
as
you can
many
visit-
times as
Yes,
possible.
Yes, exactly.
You can visit me and I'll
Always
visit
on
you.
his bike, but yeah.
This place is, I'm not 500 feet, but I'm very close to this spot, so I'm a big fan of your place, so I appreciate
you.
your business. Your food trucks are going away altogether?
When we open the food component, that's correct.
Okay. I hope the food is as good and it has as much variety as
The
those trucks
food is
offer.
going to be great, and actually will provide food for people who are vegan, people who are gluten free. It'll be all inclusive.
Okay, great. I don't have any other comments right now. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a couple. Thank you, first of all. So can we circle back on the question of the cider and
Yeah,
is
sure.
rice beer? I mean, is beer made with rice beer? Is it wine? I just want to make sure we're giving you
Okay,
the
so
flexibility in that language.
And I really appreciate you saying that. There are gray areas because all these products have started to become popular, and the ABC really hasn't addressed them.
Right.
The laws are archaic. Most of them were written when Prohibition ended, and I have to grapple with that all day long. If I told you, your head would spin. Some of the things we can and can't, some of the things we can't do. So we want to be able to serve kombucha.
Yeah.
As far as wine goes, I would like to sell whatever the definition of wine is under my license. Because if rice wine is not included in my license, well then I can't
Right.
sell it.
But-
So I'm really governed by my Type 23 ABC license. So I would like to have the right to sell whatever I'm allowed to sell under that license, which is wine, kombucha.
Would there be a reason that we wouldn't simply say that he can sell anything that's covered under the Type 23 license rather than spelling it out?
Oh, that would be great.
I would assume that cider. I'm a cider drinker,
Right.
But you may or may not want to serve it. I would assume that it's covered under that license. But,
Yeah, it is. So that would be great.
It's not on the list, and I
Right,
think
that
it
would
would
be
be
great.
simpler to just.
Well, it's funny because cider.
No?
People try to decide to describe cider. Some people describe it as wine. Some people describe
Exactly.
it as beer. So if it falls under my 23, I'm good.
Right.
So let's do that. That would be wonderful.
I don't
It'd
know
make
if
it much
that's-
easier to
okay.
understand, and there won't be any gray area.
Okay. And then on the music side, I just want to point out to my colleagues that there's another ban on dancing, and I'm just, God forbid anybody dances, but I don't know that. I don't know why that has to be. But on the live entertainment, would you find it acceptable to have amplified music inside, not amplified music outside?
If the council feels
Yeah.
that would be the easiest thing to do
Right.
tonight, I can live with it. I came to you with an extra request, so I'm going to walk away with more than I thought I could have. So I'm fine with that.
And then-
if that's what you want to do.
Thank you. And then I just, looking at who you're knowing a little bit about the neighbors, part of where I'm going on looking at the time, have you, St. Anne's is across 20th Street, am I right?
Yeah, we donate beer to them quite often.
Catholics.
In terms of opening an hour earlier,
that's interesting.
relative to their
Well,
Sunday services, is that
I've been there. There's no impact on
no
traffic.
impact. Okay.
There's none.
And then in terms of the music, I can imagine it might be difficult to be at UCLA getting a difficult diagnosis or treatment
No.
prognosis
So the
and hear
tasting
music
the tasting room is
Okay.
only open
when they're closed.
When they're closed,
by definition.
by definition.
Okay. So
They close at 5 p.m. Earlier than 5 p.m. Like at 4:30, the whole parking lot clears out. Nobody's
Okay.
there. On those holidays, they're closed. On
Right.
Saturdays and Sundays, they're closed.
okay, so I was imagining a situation where there's no situation where the tasting room is open and UCLA is open.
No, and the only reason
Okay.
their doors might be open is because they've come downstairs to have a beer after work.
Sure.
And then they need to go back
There you go.
upstairs.
Yeah,
So,
no, I
they're not
understand
taking
that.
patients at that time.
Okay. I'm a little wary of going further because I'm afraid they're going to name a beer after us in a way we don't like. So
Just you, Sean. Nobody else.
Richard. Commissioner Fresco was in the queue.
I just wanted to say, because I like to add these things to our discussion, that Santa Monica, when we were first a city, we met in a hotel which burned down, and we immediately moved to the nearest beer garden, and that's where they held their early council meetings. So I think and there were several beer gardens in Santa Monica where they made their own beer on site, and that was a big thing here. I mean, that was how it was done in
Yeah, brew pubs.
yeah,
They're called
in
brew
those
pubs.
days. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is, I think that we need more places where there can be live music in Santa Monica. So I would be really very much in support of that. So
Thank you.
those are the
Appreciate that.
two
I do too.
comments I have.
Yeah, and would you consider inviting Samo High bands, local?
Let 'em
there are
program
local.
it however he
community
wants.
groups. Would you be open to
Well, I don't wanna-
inviting community groups to, not as a condition, but as part of the music program? We have so
I don't
many
think we can have
community
high school
music groups here.
students at
If the
beer
music
garden,
is good
but, you know,
and won't drive people away, of course it would.
Great. Okay.
course it
Well,
would.
no, you do. You
Yeah,
opened it with
abso-
all your community
absolutely
stuff. So yeah,
As long as they're over
They're good.
21,
as long as they're
and they're
over
good.
21.
right.
Quite a good point.
They can sit over there and right no. We have 2 requests to speak. We'll start with Trevor Makara.
He's at the back. Thank you for coming.
Thank
up.
you.
Appreciate
well,
it.
and he'll have his 3 minutes in a moment.
My name is Trevor McCara. I live at 1912 Broadway, approximately a block from the location of the Santa Monica Brew Works, and I just came to offer my support. It's been a great addition to our neighborhood since they opened. I can tell you, I've been there on a Saturday, and before you know it, there's 3 or 4 of my neighbors are there. Just sitting around, everybody's catching up. It's a great meeting place. It's been a great addition to the community. I haven't heard a single complaint. I would suggest even having the presence there with the later hours has helped to reduce some of the homeless component in the neighborhood, because the place used to shut down at late in the afternoon, and the residential area turns into an industrial area right there, and it was a favorite place for homeless people to hang out. Don't see them around anymore. So yeah, that's as far as the music component, I think that would be a great addition. I know on the weekends, especially in the summer, St. Anne's is cranking out music till 11 o'clock. They host weddings there all the time. Nobody seems to notice or complain much about that. And I would think that this would be nowhere near as loud as what they're pumping out sometimes. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. And Andrew Hoyer.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Andrew Hoyer. I'm the current president of Santa Monica Mid-City Neighbors. Our territory does actually include the far side of Colorado, so Santa Monica Brew Works is a business inside our territory. A year ago or more, we instituted a Monday evening, first Monday happy hour of the month, and unfortunately, I've not been able to go to the Santa Monica Brew Works because all they serve is beer. And on Mondays, the food truck is meat. So I have a lot of vegetarians in my group. Some people like wine. So I've never really taken the group there. So at an informal poll at the new Socolo, where we had our largest 18 members show up, I mentioned the fact that they wanted to expand and would they like to have happy hour there? And the answer was 18 votes of yes. So hopefully they'll be open for that very, very soon. I think we just heard a very local resident speak about the noise issue, and that the greater volume is probably going to come from the weddings, etc., at St. Anne's. And as good Catholics, I don't think they're going to complain about a bar across the street. So the only greatest concern is just to the east is the large apartment complexes. But I imagine that's where they get the majority of their business. So a full-throated support from Mid-City Neighbors, and we look forward to the first time we get to have our happy hour there. Thank you.
Trust a Mid-City Michelada will be made available for them. Great. All right. Thank you. You have 3 more minutes if you want to tell us anything else.
Can I jump in for a second? Because I think we need to hear from staff
Before we hear from the applicant on their response.
Because
Okay, sure.
I think that we're all going down this path of music,
Yep.
but staff might have another thought.
Yep. Let's do it.
Appreciate that. So we've just been talking about this. It's actually a new request to us. We were not aware of it previously. The request for the changes in hours of operation, that's obviously within the scope of the project that was submitted. However, the request for live music and outside music, unfortunately, I think we have a noticing issue. It was not included in the public notice. It wasn't part of the application. Usually when we have these requests, they are included with, in this case, it's a brewery or, it's whether we have a bar, nightclub, lounge, we always include in the notice that there will be, whether it's amplified, live music, what have you. As you're well aware, music is handled very sensitively
Yes.
within the zoning ordinance. Usually with a restaurant, it's required to be compliant with the noise ordinance, which actually requires amplified music to be indoors. And we have, unfortunately, some ongoing enforcement cases with respect to music. So we do want to tread very carefully in this regard, because, this is a permit that does run with the land, and if, Santa Monica Brewworks were to go away and we have a subsequent operator, these things will continue. So I think that we just need an opportunity to make sure that we analyze the issues as a staff and, can come back with some thoughts about that. However, I think that if you wanted to consider it, an option is to continue the item, to renotice it, certainly is an option, or not include it. I think it's all before the commission, but we just wanted to note that.
From a
for tonight's-
procedural standpoint, is the noticing issue also is there a Brown Act issue? The question that I have is if this comes up and we would like to give direction, if we'd like to take this up, give direction to staff, continue it, give direction to staff, and come back with something that might be ready for handling on the consent calendar, since 6 of 7 of us are here, to avoid them having to resubmit. Is there a way to simplify the process, even if, so we could have most of the conversation tonight, get to where we want to go, say, let's solve the music problem and bring it back in a couple of weeks?
So you could not come to a conclusion without voting this evening.
Correct.
So you would still have to revisit whatever became before you. You could do it as quickly as you felt proper at the time.
Right.
But we would need to renotice it.
Yes.
At the, so you could do that, and you could have as full a discussion as you feel is appropriate tonight without signaling that you have completely foreclosed on the matter at the time. You still have to keep an open mind by the time it comes back to you.
Understood.
But does that mean that what we could do tonight is take some straw votes and reach some likely positions on some of these issues, including the hours and whatever, and then leave open the issue of the live music? So we had a project here that was now, I think, Elefante Bar. And I'm not sure whether it was noticed, but certainly there was a discussion about live music as opposed to recorded music, and the commission came down wrongly, in my opinion, on just recorded music up to a certain point and whatever. But we decided it, I think, that night. Was that because it was noticed differently?
I don't know the particulars of that, but I wonder, because it was a restaurant, so we have like restaurants with entertainment is actually a permitted use within the
No, we had a
code.
long discussion about it, and I regretted our
Yeah,
decision
yeah.
that night forevermore. But okay, so we can't reach a decision tonight if we intend to continue it. I guess the real question is of the applicant. How important is your live music? Do you want the rest of it decided tonight?
So if the music thing can't be decided tonight, I want to drop it. My building permit on Suite A
I think you answered the question.
is subject to the grant. So I'll pull the music, but if we can vote on the hours, I would appreciate that.
So let me just ask staff, in terms of in your timeline, you need a decision on the permit tonight as opposed to even 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even a week.
And
No, we can't do it.
No, I understand that. We're not meeting 2 weeks from now, but I'm just being, to be clear. And if we were to put in the, and I'm just trying to keep things simple. If we were to put in that 1-year review function, would that give the applicant an opportunity to come back and put music on the table then, if it were properly noticed, without having to apply for a whole new CUP? I'd like to, what I'm getting at is, can we streamline this process a bit such that music can come back on the table properly noticed without them having to go for a whole new CUP? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to wait a year to come back either. I think the commission can establish whatever timeline, you deem is appropriate. As a matter of function, like the permits for alcohol use are actually, we've reduced the fees, for those, so it's not like all the same across the board. So it could certainly come back as an amendment.
Okay.
To the CUP.
Is what you're asking is, could he amend it without having to go through like a whole rigmarole of a whole new application?
Exactly.
I think that's the question.
That's what I'm looking at.
I think once you issue the permit,
That's
you
it.
do have to
Okay.
amend. Yeah,
So-
you have to submit some amendment.
So let's ask the
So
question.
unfortunately, I think it's
We
either
just didn't
you,
know about it, yeah.
When does your
it's
building...
either you, we continue tonight for our next meeting and talk and advertise for music, or you'd have to come back and submit a
Right.
new application,
New
unfortunately.
application.
When do you need the building approval by?
I really needed it months ago. I mean, I'm burning
Yes, but-
through.
I understand that.
You
but
understand the
what's
financial.
the latest time that you can keep it? 1 more week or 3?
I could live with 1 more week, of course.
We can't
Is it
notice.
possible?
No, we can't
Okay,
Notice.
I understand that, but we're asking the question. So really, you're going to have to drop it. Otherwise, it'll be 3 weeks from us.
Right, I understand. So I want to include the hours, if you can vote on that tonight, and I will be happy to drop the music and
For
come
the time
back
being.
for the
Okay,
time being.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any language we can include in this approval that would make that simpler for them down the road? No.
There would still, the code would still require a full public hearing like the
Yeah.
one this evening. So I would be concerned about signaling too much that you've already decided before all of the information is before you.
Right.
So
We'd need to hear from the public. It's just a question of
No, I understand.
trying to avoid
Yeah.
multiple hoops. Okay.
Chair, I will move conditional use permit 19ENT0144 and look for a second, and then we can speak to it and
I
work through
second it.
the various provisions.
Yep. We have a second.
Okay, cool. So I'd like to speak to this. The first thing is, in terms of what we decide tonight, we can't bind the commission going forward, and we're not going to do that. So we're going to decide on the merits, and this gentleman will have to come back and make a further application, and we make that decision.
Yep.
But what I did hear from people this evening, and I'll just work through it, is that based on the good behaviour of the brewery and the exemplary way you've conducted yourself, and the fact that only a couple of months ago we were discussing that we would like exactly this, craft beer or third wave coffee or vegan donuts. I mean, Chair Landis, you're very keen on all of these things, and they're great. Down near the promenade.
Just want scrumpy, that's all.
Yeah. And here you've established it, and you've established a track record of success, and now you're going to build on that and bring more people in. I think that's a tremendous thing, and you're going to activate a part of the city which is not terribly active at the moment, but a lot of people live there and they need somewhere to go, and we've seen this in other places. So it's in fact a welcome expansion, and you're in the right place if we are looking at controlling noise from alcohol-related activities. What I heard this evening was that you've asked for an extra hour on Saturday and Sunday, and I would look at conditioning it that way, to open, to allow these brunches that you're talking about. The beer garden that you've asked for, you would like to go to an hour before the tasting room closes. And it seemed to me there were no great problems with that. Commissioner Rees suggests that we look at subjecting this to a review.
Only if they give the music.
So you would take that out. Commissioner Landis was very concerned about the cider and other issues, which I think we need to tackle with a reference to what the ABC license allows. So can you change that? Would you be able to change that condition? Okay. And then
Hours.
Yeah, so we can specify the hours. So 11 o'clock opening on Saturday and Sunday, and then the beer garden would go until...
Would be 11 a.m. to, I believe that is 11 p.m. on Saturday and 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. Is that the...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that is correct. And so we would want to make those changes, and then the rest of the commission may have some thoughts on the suitability of this.
Are those friendly to the seconder? Those two amendments?
Yes.
Okay. Other updates to the...
Well, I would just like to repeat what Commissioner McKinnon was saying. First of all, what we're seeing here is a transition from kind of an industrial belt of our city historically to a more service-oriented kind of industrial, because they're not an industrial beer, but a service-oriented kind of economy. And it is perfectly positioned between two light rail stops. It also has a perfect matchup with the needs of UCLA. In other words, you couldn't imagine a better lineup between the needs of a medical operation, unlikely as that is, and the needs of a brewery and, basically a bar in effect. And the other thing I'd like to repeat, the fact that this is a proven product. They've had no complaints in 4 years. I don't think there's any restaurant in Santa Monica to make that statement. So I think we're on solid ground here to endorse this, and it's a welcome addition to activate an area of the city that, to be quite honest, is really dead at night, and it really needs it. And so this is a perfect place to put it at the intersection of two major streets, in this case, Colorado and 20th Street. They're big streets, so it's a perfect place for that kind of activation. So I'm all for it.
I would just like to add that if whatever you can do, as we were talking about earlier, to get people out of cars and to get people onto bikes, walking, make this a neighbourhood destination, I think would be greatly appreciated. Commissioner Pastor was really alluding to whether it's on your property or adjacent to it, using the mobility services, getting a drop-off and pick-up for Lyft and Uber is really important. And one block down the road is the 18th Street Arts Centre. It would be useful if you had a link with them so we could create a precinct which is about creativity. And with that, I think we're ready to vote.
Commissioner Reese or Commissioner Pastor? Can we vote on this and then give direction or make a request of staff that they follow up on Commissioner Pastor's request regarding the signage, the please put your scooters here signage, which as a recommendation rather than a condition? Okay, great. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner McKinnon?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Cheers. Yes.
Chair Landris?
Yes. And that passes. We'll
need
hold the
this-
statement of official
yes,
action
the
until
official
we have the actual wording, or are we ready to approve
I
that?
think we're pretty, if the commission, I think we're clear about its conditions 2, 3, and 7 with the changes. Am I right?
I'm bringing it up right now.
Oh, I think so, yes.
It
Can you put
is
7 on the screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
condition 2, condition 3, and then condition 7.
Yeah.
So it would be along with the sale of alcoholic beverages or as authorized. Beverages produced in alcoholic beverages produced in collaboration with other breweries as authorized under the existing Type 23 ABC license. Is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Heidi?
I think we don't need to call out the specific beverages. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Just
Yeah.
any beverage whatever's
Right.
covered by Type
Whatever's
23,
licensed
they
by
can
Type
do.
23. Yeah.
Okay.
Sale of any beverage is authorized under the existing Type 23 license.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're
So I need a motion on the STOA then.
I move the STOA.
Second.
As amended.
Okay. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner McKinnon?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Chair Landris?
yes. And do we have a motion to request of the Mobility Division that they work with the applicant to encourage corralled scooter parking and safe Uber and Lyft drop-off?
Yes.
Great. I'll second that motion. For all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. For those following along at home, item 9B has been continued at the applicant's request. Item 9C has been continued at the applicant's request to February 5th, 2020. We have the written communications, of which folks are aware, the Planning Commission case list, and the transmittal of development projects information. Does anyone have future commission agenda items? I would note on my way over, I heard a rather scary report about the growth of delivery vehicles, expected to be something on the order of 80% over the next decade, and increasing average commute times by 11 minutes per day. Given that we have the mobility, the bike report next week, I'm imagining vehicles moving in and out of bike lanes, and I'm reflecting on Commissioner McKinnon's point, wondering whether that ought to be something we think about for a future commission agenda item related to mobility. Public input, seeing none. Could we therefore adjourn in memory of Jim Lumsford, our late planning director and landmarks commissioner?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Nice work, everybody.
You should